This is a bird mansion, or that's what I'm calling it. It looks like it's from the 80s. Now it could be the 90s, but most likely it's a wood project from the 80s. And we're going to turn this into something pretty awesome. I've had this in my stash for probably a year or more, and I really wanted to do some woodland stuff. So I grabbed this and a few other things, and I only got a couple things done, but I think you guys are going to like them. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just taking these pegs off except one, and that little weird looking pot thing, the bird and all that stuff out of there. We are going to end up taking that other peg off and covering these holes, so don't worry about those. The first thing I'm going to do is paint this with some gray paint. Now you can use any kind of paint. I'm using the DIY letterpress gray, and it actually dries pretty light, and even after I seal it, it's still light. So this is just a base. This is not the color this is going to be. This is going to look nothing like this. You guys know me. I start out with pretty basic, and it just kind of goes all uphill from there. All right, so we're going to let that dry. See how light this is? And I even sealed this. Generally with DIY clay paint, when you seal it, it goes back to the wet color, but this didn't. But again, it was just a base color because I really wasn't sure where I wanted to go with this. And I got out a lot of different colors of paint, and I actually just start dabbing different colors on. I just showed you one of the chalk paints, and then I do go ahead and show you some more. I bring them into the screen, so if you're interested in the colors, you'll be able to see the labels in just a second. This project was so much fun, and if you like this one, wait until you see the one after this. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for the second project coming up after this one. I'm getting ready to paint the roof a brown color. It's a truffle chalk paint by Waverly, but that's not the color it ended up. It ends up black, so really this step was unnecessary. Only if I knew that I wanted it black, which I should have known. I mean, you all know me, I love black, so I don't know why I started with brown. It was necessary to just show me that I didn't like it and I wanted it to be black. So at this step, I would paint it black and not the truffle. As I was doing that other painting, I was thinking I really want some grit on here, so I grabbed the salt wash and just dumped it into the paint that I already had on the paper, and I just start smushing it and mixing it like I normally do. Now you can mix this into the paint. You can use baking soda instead of this if you just want a little bit of grit and not such a flat surface. So we're just going to do a little bit of that, and we're going to add some more texture coming up. Like I said, most of the time things come to me as I work on the projects, and I was thinking I really want some crackle on here. So instead of using a crackle medium, I just went ahead and got out my different texture glosses and glazes. Now I'm showing you here that you can mix salt wash and paint, or baking soda and paint, or a really thick paint to do this. You don't need what I'm getting ready to use, but I'm trying to use up this product because I just don't use this kind of stuff anymore, and it's just going to dry out. So I'm using it instead of the paint mixed with a thickening agent, which could be, like I said, baking soda, etc. So I'm just going to use this crackle stencil, and I'm going to use a little palette knife and just scrape this over the areas that I want it to look crackled. I'm slowing this down here because I'm going to show you that when I get done with the stencil, I'm going to go back over the edges of this stencil crackled textured areas, because the stencil makes it have kind of harsh lines. So I'm just taking my palette knife and I'm smushing the edges of all of these and smoothing it. So although it is taking away some of the crackle, it's making it imperfect. Instead of these just harsh crackle places, it's actually going to blend from crackle just to smashed texture. And then if there's any peaks on top of it, I'll go over that too with my palette knife to smooth those down while it's still wet, instead of having it raised real high. So see, that was kind of squared off and I didn't like that, so I'm just going to smooth that and make some just textured places. And once I get done with all of this, it seemed like there was way too many crackles, so I just kind of went back over certain areas and just flattened the crackles so there wasn't any, but it was texture, if that makes sense. In other words, I didn't want just random patches of blocks of crackle. I wanted it to be flowing into the whole area. Now here is where I changed the brown to black, and you'll be able to see some of the crackle. It's dried now, and the stuff I used was very glossy, but that doesn't matter. It's not going to end up being glossy after we put our layers on. And I am leaving some of that brown showing through because we do want a lot of different layers of colors. So I'm mostly covering the brown, but not completely. Now while I was doing this, I had this vision of the black coming off of the roof and kind of draining down just maybe 1/4 to 3/4 of a way over the green. And so here's where I just started it. I was just like, oh, okay, I want to paint that brown under the hang, and then I want that black to come on down and have this almost drippy look. So I got my water bottle and just started spraying and let it drip down some. So what sparked this video was I decided to go in my backyard and do some foraging for bark, moss, vines, anything that I thought that looked like a dried plant, and I knew that I wanted to use some of the bark on this. So I picked some flat pieces out of the bark that I brought in and just started cutting the bottoms to make it even and leaving the tops kind of jagged to give it that kind of jagged look. When I collected all of this, it was on a dry day, and I brought everything and let it sit on my porch for a little while, and then I gave it all a good lacquer of hairspray and let it completely dry. You can use a clear coat spray. This just kind of keeps everything from falling apart as bad, and if there's any little critters in there, it will get rid of those. We're going to be adding some pre-made molds. These are IOD molds. I'll have them listed below. You can get these at Aunt Bee's Attic. I will also have other things that I use listed below in the description box, but I already had this pre-made. I use the amazing casting resin, and you can reheat them and bend them as you need them. I just gave that a good coat of black paint, and now I found these twisted vines, and we're going to use one of these to put on the right hand side of our door. So I'm just going to trim that down and use some hot glue and the wood glue or the triple thick glue. The triple thick will hold it long term, and the hot glue will hold it temporary while that other glue is taking its time to dry. Now don't forget, you can slow down my videos by going to the bottom right hand of the box of video of YouTube where it says settings, or it has that little cog wheel. Click on that and slow it down to whatever speed you want to watch it at. I went to glue my door on and it needed a shim, so I just grabbed a piece of that bark, hot glued it on, and then put my door glued on top of it, and it worked out perfect. We're going to start working on the coloring of our paint. So I have gotten some of this Waverly chalk paint, and it's kind of a grayish tan. I can't think of the name of it right now. And then a little bit of maybe some caramel color. And I'm just highlighting some of those crackles. And to be honest, this step is not necessary because, like I said, we're going to be adding a lot more stuff to this. I just kind of wanted to see where my texture was at and where it was going to pop out. And then, so I guess it was a little necessary at this point. Now I'm grabbing a couple of those colors of green that we originally worked with, and I'm going to start working on my door to start getting it to blend with the rest of our other colors. I go ahead and add some of those greens to the black because remember we painted that black and it does not have the greens on it like the original green colors up above the door. So we're just adding some of that in, and again, just getting those colors in there. Again, this is all about the eye. When you're looking at something and you think it needs something and you start adding, just add to it until you get it the way you like it. And then if you get too much, you can always re-add your original color, which we will do. We're going to add some black paint back in here later on, you'll see. Next, we're going to work on the molds that's going on here. And I will tell you, some of this I did not get on camera, but I do show you some of it. I'm going to be putting some pre-made mushroom molds, again, using that same casting resin. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll see I have a big bucket that I just grabbed from. And these are going to be painted a tan color on the bottom and a orangey color on the top. And I took several colors and blended the tans and the oranges just to get them the way that I wanted. But I do show you that I'm adding gold rub and buff to the bases of them. And we will talk about what I just showed you here in just a few minutes. All right, so here are my mushrooms. I'm not going to use all these, but I wasn't sure what size I needed for the right side. So like I said, the bases of these are mostly that sort of tan gray, and then I just painted the tops and blended the tan into that sort of cinnamon color. And right now I'm adding some gold rub and buff to this. I think I started out with antique gold and then changed it over to the brighter gold of rub and buff. Yeah, there it is. I wanted this project to be really highlighted in gold, and you're going to see it. I hope you like it. You'll have to let me know. I wanted this to be dark, rustic, with a hint of gold. And those little mushrooms, I painted the tops actually with a color called mushroom, and it's almost a caramel looking. So I'm adding some of the gold to the tops of those two, just a hint. And now on those little kind of short, stumpy ones, I'm going to add little white dots, kind of like the traditional short stumpy ones. The red ones has the white dots, and a lot of the cream and beige ones has white dots. Going back in with a little bit of that rub and buff on the tops of these once I kind of get them the way that I want them. Now coming up, you're going to see that I do have these laid on the house, but I don't have the right one glued down. I do end up gluing that down a little bit later. All right, so here's where we are at, and I got started without the camera on, unfortunately, but I have these mica flakes in different colors. We've used these in other projects. You can get these in the kind of the glassy mica flakes, and then these little green ones, they look like it's not moss, but it's something that was on the wood, little flakes of green. I don't know, it's a moss color, but I'm just using some Mod Podge, or yeah, I think that's Mod Podge, and I'm putting the Mod Podge on, and then I'm picking up these mica flakes and adding them kind of all over this to get that more texture. You know, I told you we were going to be adding texture several different ways. And then I have this texture grit paste that has kind of a sparkle in it. You'll see me use that. I only use a little bit of it because I'm just showing you how I done the part that I missed on camera. And it's really bright right now, but the mica flakes you're seeing, they're kind of a brown color, and I have those in a orange color. We use some of those around Christmas time. They're more of a cinnamon, not necessarily orange, but I add some of those in kind of a swirl, and you'll see that coming up, that they'll be pre-added, and I'm doing the same here, the same way I do here, just grabbing that paste with my finger and rubbing it on. You can see it kind of has a little bit of a texture and a little mica in it, and I just randomly rub this stuff all over. It does change again because we're going to add some more black back in here and some gold. If I had not sped some of this up, this would have been a very long video because I did this in different parts, on and off, over times in between work when I didn't have work, and just when I felt like it, to be honest. I was kind of lacking on this one because I got started all gung-ho, and then I just kind of fizzled on it. That's why I only ended up with 2 projects. I really enjoyed making these, and I love how they turned out, so I feel like that taking the time for 2 projects versus 5, 6 or more really makes a difference sometimes. Now, I love those fast little projects, but these that is more detailed definitely are a labor of love, and I can see the difference. We're going to go ahead and start working on the metal on this door. I want to bring out some copper accents on it. I definitely want to add some gold to it. We're going to do that too. I wanted the vines on this door, or the tree branches, to have the black, have the green, have some gold, some brown. I wanted it to have a lot of depth and colors. And I love this autumn gold rub and buff. It's one of the new ones that I got I got a 4-pack from Amazon, and it had 4 different colors. And this is more of a coppery color, So I'm just putting anything on here that looks like metal with this color. But again, we did go back in and add some gold to this as well. So Beth over at Aunt Bee's Attic, I had ordered some Fusion Bronze Metallic. I really wanted to try it because it has this bronzy green look to it. She sent me it, and Paint Couture has a metallic bronze as well. We're going to be using that coming up. We're going to use it on the branches and then of course on some other places. But before we do that, I wanted to tone that natural wood down to a black. So I got out my DIY dark black wax and just ran over it real quick with that. I also added a little bit of black back to our door because I felt like it got just a little bit too far away from that black background. Like I said, you can always add your base colors back if you get too much or too happy with products like I do. And you know, all these products are not necessary. I usually do a lot of trial and error when I'm making projects like this and playing around to see what I like, what works, and how many steps I may not use the next time. And most of the time I still use a lot of steps because it's just fun. I think it's fun. I know sometimes this seems overwhelming to a lot of people, but if you don't need to use all these products, but this is just some inspiration and shows you how I use them and ways that you can use them. All right, so here is the two bronzing things that we just talked about. The Paint Couture is really, really dark. It is a bronzy black to me. It is gorgeous. And then I wanted to show you the difference between it and the Fusion's bronze. To me, this has a green brown look, which I've been very obsessed with. So they both have their place, and like I said, I did use some just to kind of see and try it out. I like a hint of metallic on a lot of my pieces that I make, especially things like this that are kind of small, not really small, but detailed and have a lot of different types of media on them. After I put all the texture and those mica flakes and things on the top, a lot of my black got covered up. So I wanted to go back in and add some black back to that. I definitely want the colors from those pieces of mica and the texture, but I also want just the texture under that black. So how we get it back under that black is we add black on top of it, leaving some of that color of those mica flakes and the other little moss, like they're almost like eggshell flakes. That's another thing. If you don't have this kind of stuff, you can dry out your eggshells and crush them up and use them in place of these things. You don't have to buy this texture stuff. You can get it from eggshells. Remember when I said that I added some of the copper mica flakes to match my mushrooms? Here they are. I just added like a swirl down and around the hole up there at the top, which we're getting ready to cover, and then a little bit down by my mushrooms and a few, like maybe one or two on the roof. I didn't want it to be overwhelming like I did with the other flakes because I didn't want to have to cover a lot back up. You know, that's the thing, if you get out of hand with it, you either got a piece that's really covered with too much of something, but there's definitely ways to fix it. Okay, so this is some of the vines that I did get out of our woods, and this one's rolls up really nicely, so we're going to make a little tiny wreath to go over the little opening up at the top, and we're also going to use a piece of bark to make the window. And I'm going to play a little bit of music while you guys watch this. Once we finish with this window, I still have to cover that little hole where that second peg was at. So I'll just grab a few more kind of pointy looking pieces of bark and glue them just to cover it and make them flow with the other pieces that are attached to above the door. So since I added that coppery looking flakes, I really wanted to add some more coppery looking color. So I just pulled out that Rub and Buff, and then I have this really older fiery red of Prima Wax. Grab both of those and just played around with them, adding them here and there, just to highlight more of that coppery color. I hope you guys have enjoyed this project and seen some of the processes and things that you can do. Again, not necessary, but just a lot of fun and a lot of trying and playing around with things. It just gives you some ideas for inspiration. Definitely don't have to do many steps to get something that you enjoy or want to make. But this is just ways that you can use. Maybe you take away one thing from this that you can use on your next project. That really is what this is all about. So now, I had told you earlier that I wanted some gold. Maybe I did. Wanted some gold dripping kind of down from the top. So I just grabbed that Rub and Buff and a brush so I could get some pointy looking ends and give this a few little drippy gold coming down from the top on this peak and then kind of to the left on that peak above the mushrooms. I always ask you guys questions if you enjoy this type of project, and a lot of times you do say you do. Some say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of steps. You know, if you want to continue seeing this type of project occasionally, not all the time, definitely let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if this is something that you would try, or at least use some of the steps in maybe a project coming up. And just give me some feedback, because I love hearing from you all. Usually you have great feedback and give me really great ideas to add on to what I've already done. All right, so these little pieces of mushrooms were in clumps on a stump, and I got them, like I said, and cleaned them out and used them to kind of do a base below our mushrooms. Now, I don't really use this piece here. I do just end up using those mushroom pieces. This little wedge wood, I've got several of these that I thrifted. I'm going to use it for my little step. And I found that little stick with that moss on it. That was the only piece I could find. And I cut that down and put it right there. And I end up adding a taller mushroom. That mushroom's not glued down. I end up adding a taller mushroom to that, I think. Or either I moved that one up. Coming up. All right, we are almost finished. You're going to see I've got everything glued down coming up in this next clip, and I take some clear coat and clear over that piece of wood for our little step there, because it's very new looking and I want to grunge it up, so I need it to have a clear coat on it so that when I add the other stuff I can kind of wipe it back. And what I end up doing is using a little bit of the Waverly watered down wax, antique wax, a little bit of black paint, a little bit of green paint, just kind of all the colors that's in this piece to dingy that up some. But before we do that, we're going to add some moss in a few places that we need to kind of cover some holes and make things flow a little bit better. So I add some in a few places. Also, when I do the dingying up of that little step there, I go ahead and where I cut some of the mushrooms, the edges were white. I use that to dye those edges to make them blend in better with the natural colors. We also add a few little green sticks behind our mushrooms to kind of look like trees and fill in a few little gaps behind the mushrooms as well. I also added a little bit of metallic to our base. And what do you all think of this? Let me know in the comments below. Our little house is finished. It's kind of like a little fairy house and is no longer a 1980s bird mansion. Our next project, actually I've had in my stash for a while, and I did buy it on sale, but I did not thrift it. It is this Tim Holtz little clock. Now he still has some of these available, and he even has a couple other versions. We're going to turn this into a little rabbit house, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint this thing black. I'm going to use some clay paint to paint it with, but you can use chalk paint, whatever kind you want. I'm going to start my base with black on this. I kind of want to stay in the theme with the house that we just did. And I'm going to let that dry really well. The main character is going to be a little bunny, and it's a little kid's bunny or a figurine. I got a whole bag of these animals from a thrift store. So we're just giving it a good little coat of a tannish gray. And then I'm going to highlight it with some brown and some gold rub and buff. The next item that's going to go in here is going to be a little tiny clay pot. I got 2 of these from Michael's. They're really tiny, much smaller than the ones at Dollar Tree. And I want to start out with aging this with some of that very tan paint. And then I'm going to add some vines and some moss and some of those green berries and some white florals. This is going to be laying like it's laying on its side near our bunny. To get our clock ready to have stuff put in it, we're going to go ahead and put a bunch of hot glue and some of this sisal Spanish moss. It's called several different things, but I'm going to use this. It's a bag I thrifted. I'm going to go ahead and glue some of it in the bottom to start our base off with. Next, we're going to place our pot on its side with some hot glue, and we're going to put our bunny on one of those little wood slices. We're going to use hot glue and wood glue to attach him for long-term hold on that wood slice. One thing I want to mention is with metal, a lot of times paint does not stick very well with it. Now this was very shiny, and I should have added a coat of slick stick or something similar, but it's not going to matter because we're going to use waxes. That's going to be covering up a lot of the silver, so don't get too stressed out about that. You can always cover it up and seal it so it won't chip off. So I'm using some of these moss rocks to kind of fill the back in. These come from Dollar Tree, and I'm using a couple of those with hot glue. So I knew I wanted to do something besides paint the back of this, and so I went ahead and dug through my stash and found this beautiful paper, and I thought that floral would be so pretty on the background. I wanted it to be light, even though I love that dark music there. I wanted it to be light so you could see it. We're going to put little fairy lights in here. So I'm just hot gluing that on, and that's going to be our background for our bunnyscape. So something that I was going to tell you all, what was it? Well, it'll come back to me. So I'm just cutting the extra off of that. You got to be real mindful when you're doing one of these, because if you get too much coming out the back, you're going to have a problem putting that back on. So I had to make sure that I left plenty of room. So I added my fairy lights in there, and this back pops off. Isn't that so pretty? Okay, now look at this. This is a step that I did not get on video, and y'all are probably thinking, what the heck just happened? I wanted this to look like it was aged around the face, so I took some of that like tan gray paint and added some salt wash and pounced it on different areas for texture. And we're gonna fix this. I promise you're gonna love the way it looks. So I let that dry, I sealed it real good, and now we're gonna black wax this stuff and get it to blend in with our clock, because we're gonna go in and add some waxes on top of this to make this look like a really aged clock that has a hint of gold. Go all over that with the wax, wipe it back, and voila, here it comes. It has toned down, and now we've got our base to add some waxes on top of here for some metallics. So once I wiped it back, it got the color that I wanted around the face. I wanted it to look kind of like a dirty window, like where you'd wiped and cleaned but not got the corners. And that's what it's got. It's got that kind of gray halo look. So now we're going to take some antique wax, some gold wax, and I've got this green wax that I use on here. Again, you don't need all these. I just have them and I'm trying to use them. And the more colors you get and the more layers, the more dimensional, and it makes things look awesome. Of course, if you don't overkill it and turn everything brown or like mud, which I've done that too in the past, but we're just going to wax this up until we get it the color we want, and then this piece is done. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, let me know if you are looking forward to more, and what do you think about the photos of this clock? There are photos of it with the lights, and here are photos without the lights. I will see you all in the next video.